Hello. Thank you for your continuous support, this means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. Now, let's dive into the details of today's story. I hadn't stepped foot in that office since Grandpa Merrick's health began to decline. And even now, I only came because he made me promise. The conference room smelled like lemon oil and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to wood and secrets. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace with a perfectly manicured hand. My father sat, stiffly, arms crossed, like he was bracing for battle. And Kalia, ever the curated darling, wore a cream blouse too, pristine for grief, and a half-smile like she'd already won. Mr. Halpern, Grandpa's lawyer for over 3 decades, cleared his throat and opened the folder with slow, deliberate movements. "We are gathered to honor the final wishes of Merrick Wynne." His voice didn't waver, not even as he looked directly at me before reading the allocations aloud. To Kalia Wynne, he began the Jackson Hole cabin and the vintage 1959 Gibson guitar. Kalia blinked, clearly expecting more. To Everett and Let Wynne, his voice continued the heirloom grandfather clock, select vinyl records, and a $10,000 charitable gift made in their name. My mother made a noise between a scoff and a gag. "That can't be right." Mr. Halpern didn't flinch. He turned the next page to Serafina Wynne, my granddaughter, my confidant. "He leaves his entire financial estate totaling $38,246,000. Silence. "Then what?" my father barked. Kalia's jaw twitched. My mother stood up, face flushed. "She abandoned us." "She doesn't deserve," Mr. Halpern continued, without lifting his eyes. "This will was signed, notarized, and filed by Merrick Wynne personally 3 months prior to his death. They didn't hear the rest." My father lunged across the table, snatched the check Mr. Halpern had just handed me, and held it up like it was counterfeit. "You think this buys you back in?" Before I could respond, he lit a match. The check curled and blackened as the fire danced along the edge. My mother ripped the envelope I'd held, tearing it until Grandpa's handwriting dissolved into shreds. "This is what happens when you betray your family," she hissed. I didn't move. I didn't beg. I just smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes but keeps you steady. Because what they burned wasn't what they thought. And what they never saw was the envelope still tucked inside my coat. The last real conversation I had with my father ended with him saying, and quote, "If you walk out that door, you don't walk back in." End quote. I was 19. I had just turned down a full ride to his alma mater's business program and enrolled, instead, in a small liberal arts college, upstate, to study visual design. He called it a hobby with delusions. My mother didn't argue. She just stood behind him with her lips pressed so tight they nearly disappeared. 3 weeks later, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my bedroom stripped bare. The desk, the bed, even the bookshelf with the notes Grandpa used to leave between the pages gone. In their place were 2 gray armchairs, a faux orchid, and a framed print of a lighthouse I'd never seen before. The door plate had been changed from Serafina to guest room A. Kalia passed me in the hallway and laughed. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you were using it." They didn't cut me off all at once. At first it was small things, missed birthday cards, unanswered calls. Then the rent check from my parents didn't show up. When I called to ask, my mother sighed and said, and quote, "Actions have consequences, Sarah. You wanted independence. Now you have it." I would have lost the apartment if Grandpa hadn't stepped in. End quote. He wired the exact amount 2 days later, no questions asked. After that, the money came in a quiet rhythm. Not too much, never flashy, just enough to keep the lights on and the heat running. With it came letters in his shaky, elegant script. He never criticized me for leaving. He never asked me to come back. But in every line, there was something stronger than either. He saw me. The last one I ever received arrived 3 weeks before he passed. It said only survival isn't weakness. It's the first proof of strength. I tucked that letter into my wallet and carried it through every job rejection, every silent holiday, every evening spent pretending I didn't care. I carried it still even as the ashes of the fake check cooled on the table in front of me, and my hand slipped into my coat to touch the real envelope waiting there. The first thing I did when I got home was lock the door behind me and slip off my heels. My legs were trembling, but not from fear, more like exhaustion held in place too long. I laid my coat on the kitchen chair and pulled out the envelope Grandpa had given me a month before he died. He'd handed it over in a quiet booth at Hillstone Diner wrapped in a cloth napkin like he was giving me a relic. "Don't open it," he said, "unless they burn it." And they had. I broke the wax seal and unfolded the contents slowly. A single check almost identical to the one that had turned to ash in front of me just hours earlier. The same number, same signature, but this one was marked in tiny red letters, non-negotiable copy. My fingers didn't tremble. I turned the check over and found a small USB drive taped to the back along with a handwritten note in Grandpa's blocky script. "Let them burn it. Then open the real file." I plugged it in. There was no loading screen, no password prompt, just a single folder, labeled Inheritance, and inside it a PDF copy of a trust transfer form. It was signed, witnessed, and filed through a firm I didn't recognize. The account number ended in digits I'd memorized as a child his birthday backwards. The funds were real. The transfer had already happened weeks ago. The check they torched wasn't just a decoy. It was bait. I leaned back in my chair. The silence in my apartment thick as velvet. This wasn't about them anymore. It hadn't been for a while. Grandpa hadn't just trusted me. He'd planned for their reaction step by step. And now so would I. The next morning, I tried to check my bank balance, part habit, part reassurance. The screen blinked once, then again, before an error message appeared. "Account not found." I tried another card, declined. I refreshed the login screen and typed everything slower, as if being precise could fix the glitch. Still nothing. At first, I told myself it was a security lock, maybe a fraud flag from yesterday's events. But when I called the bank, the man on the other end of the line sounded hesitant. End quote, "I'm sorry, Miss Wynn," end quote, he said, tapping at keys I couldn't see, end quote, "Our system has your account marked inactive." End quote, DC'd, actually. End quote, my mouth went dry. "That's a mistake." He paused. "It was certified by the registrar's office. Dated 2 weeks ago." I hung up before my voice could crack. The DMV confirmed it an hour later. The woman behind the glass screen blinked at her monitor, frowned, and said, end quote, "You're flagged as legally deceased." End quote, "Death certificate filed under your full name, Serafina Letwin." Her tone was flat, but her eyes flicked up to me with pity. "You'll need to file a correction. That process can take months." I didn't answer. I walked out into the cold, dazed as if someone had peeled the edges of the world back and revealed that everything I thought was solid could vanish. Across the street, a woman stood, still, half-shadowed beneath a row of bare-limbed trees. Her sunglasses were too large for the gray sky. She wore a pale blue silk scarf looped once around her neck. The same scarf my mother claimed the dry cleaners had lost 3 years ago. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. She was watching. I stepped back into the flow of foot traffic and moved without thinking, not fast but deliberate. When I turned the corner, she was gone. Back at my apartment, I pulled open the drawer where I kept old letters and laid them out like breadcrumbs. I wasn't just disinherited, I was being erased carefully, quietly, and thoroughly. And someone was watching to make sure it stuck. I opened my laptop, pulled the USB from its case. and stared at the folder Grandpa had, labeled inheritance. Somewhere inside was the next step. The brass key had been sitting in my nightstand for years, wrapped in the same worn handkerchief. Grandpa gave it to me on my 18th birthday. I never asked what had opened, he just said, and quote, "You'll need this someday, when you're ready to claim yourself." End quote. That day had come. Langford Private Vault sat behind an unmarked door near the edge of the historic district, tucked between a boutique wine shop and a faded bookstore. The woman at the front desk took one look at the key, checked her records, and led me down a quiet corridor without asking any questions. The air grew colder the farther we walked until we reached a narrow room lined with metal drawers and quote, "Box 17, end quote," she said, unlocking the drawer and sliding it forward. I nodded and waited until the door closed behind her before reaching inside. A black, fireproof folder lay there, its surface smooth and cold. I opened it slowly. The first page was a certified cashier's check, real this time with the bank seal embedded into the paper. 38 million, addressed to me. The next set of documents was heavier notarized land deeds transferring full ownership of the family estate's underlying property. Then, another stock certificates for Wynn Carroll Holdings, every voting share, every executive authority. My name in, across each, and at the bottom a flash drive in a velvet pouch. Back in my apartment, I slid it into my laptop and clicked the single file inside. Grandpa's face filled the screen. He looked older than I remembered, sitting in the sunroom with light pouring over his shoulder. "If you're seeing this, Sarah, then they did what I feared they would. They tried to erase you." He spoke slowly but clearly, every word deliberate. "You were always the quiet one. The one who saw everything, felt too much, asked for nothing. That's why they feared you. That's why I trusted you." He leaned forward slightly, eyes tired but sharp. "This isn't just money. It's memory. It's legacy. And if they tried to burn yours down, this is how you come back." The screen faded to black. And I knew exactly where I needed to go next. I found the envelope taped just beneath the peephole on my front door. Plain, white, no stamp, no handwriting except a single line in neat block letters. "They didn't burn the real check. Look in box array at Langford Security." There was no signature, no hint of who had left it, just silence on the other side of the door. I sat at the table for a long time, staring at it, then reached for my laptop. Langford had more than one vault location. Box Array wasn't listed publicly, but I recognized the name. Grandpa once joked it was where they hide the real bones. I logged into the estate email that had been created during the trust transfer and found a message I hadn't noticed before. The subject line was blank. The body just a sentence. "They are not after the money, they're after the signature." Attached was a single document, an unsigned asset transfer form. At the top, Wynn Carroll Holdings, below it, a second form, this one signed. My name was there, but the signature wasn't mine. They'd forged it, they were selling the company. I opened the company's internal dashboard and access Grandpa had set up months before, and there it was. Transactions, proposals, asset reassignment, every move approved under my name while my legal status remained deceased. I was more than disinherited. I was a loophole, a convenient silence. They thought they'd taken everything, but they left a trail, sloppy, bold, and rooted in arrogance. The kind that believed no one like me would ever come back. I reached for Grandpa's flash drive again and opened a folder labeled Charleston Land Archives. My name was listed under every plot, and I knew where I was going next. The name on the lease was W.M. Trill, a name Grandpa once used for fishing licenses and antique record auctions. "A joke," he said, and quote, "When Merrick, like the flower that keeps growing where it's not supposed to." End quote. I remembered that on the drive out past the city limits through rusted farmland and forgotten lots until I pulled up to a squat row of storage units and found number 19B. The lock clicked open with the small brass key from the velvet pouch. The air inside was stale but not untouched. A single metal shelf lined the far wall, and in the center, like it had been placed there for me to find, was a black fireproof briefcase inside a manila folder with my original birth certificate, not the updated one with my stepfather's surname. This one held only mine, Serafina Letwin. No hyphen, no edits. Next were the letters, 12 in total, each in Grandpa's unmistakable script. Most were dated within weeks of key family events. My college, graduation, my parents' vow renewal, the Christmas I spent alone. He'd written them but never mailed them. One line, repeated often. They won't erase you, not while I'm still standing. Beneath the letters was a notarized will dated after the supposed date of my death. His signature was strong, deliberate. In it, I was named sole beneficiary. Not Kalalia. Not Everett or Leet. Me. But what stilled my breath was the deed. Wynn Estate, Charleston, South Carolina. Ownership, Serafina Letwin. My fingers brushed over the embossed seal. I hadn't just inherited a house. I'd inherited the foundation, the ground under their power. And they didn't know. I sat down on a cracked plastic chair near the door, clutching the folder to my chest, feeling the shape of my name for the first time in years. I wasn't a ghost, and they had no idea I was already walking back through the door. They thought they'd slammed shut. Sylvia Orton didn't speak much when I handed her the briefcase. She just opened it, scanned the documents with sharp eyes and said, and quote, "We'll move fast." End quote. There was no awe in her tone, just certainty, like she'd seen enough family betrayals to know when the paper trail held fire. We filed the challenge within 48 hours. The hearing was set for Monday. The courthouse smelled like waxed floors and old decisions. I wore black not for mourning but because armor doesn't always clang. My parents arrived, together flanked by a young lawyer in a too-tight suit and too loose smirk. Kalia trailed behind them, lips glossed, phone in hand. They didn't look at me. Judge Kinley presided, known for clipped sentences and a low tolerance for theatrics. When our case was called, he nodded toward Sylvia. She stood calm and deliberate. End quote. "We are here to contest the execution of the estate of Merrick Wynn," end quote, she said, "on grounds of forgery, coercion, and identity suppression." The opposing counsel rolled his eyes. End quote. "Your Honor, my clients are the documented beneficiaries. Any attempts to revise the will posthumously are not only unfounded, they're emotional." End quote. Sylvia tapped her tablet. "Your Honor, the deceased anticipated this." With a single click, the lights dimmed and the screen behind the bench lit up. Grandpa's face appeared. "If they're watching this," he said, "it means they tried to bury her." His voice was steady, even. "Let the record show I changed the will, knowingly, under no pressure. I made Serafina sole heir because she earned it, because she endured." The courtroom went still. Kalia's mouth opened, then closed. My mother palled. My father shifted like he was about to interrupt, but Judge Kinley raised a hand. "Enough," he turned to them, his voice cold. "You didn't just try to manipulate this court. You tried to erase a person." Then he looked at me. "This court recognizes Serafina Wynn as the sole legal heir to Merrick Wynn's estate. The respondent's assets are to be frozen pending further investigation." I exhaled, not from relief but release. The damage was done. Now came the reckoning. Kalia texted twice before I answered. The first message was short, "Please." The second was longer, clumsier. "Can we just talk?" Just us, like before. I agreed to meet her at a cafe near the courthouse. Neutral ground, no history attached. She was already there when I arrived, stirring a coffee she hadn't touched. Her smile trembled when she saw me. "I didn't know," she said before I could sit. "About the death certificate, about the will." They told me it was a routine form. I just signed where Dad told me to. I didn't speak. I set my phone on the table screen, dark but recording. I swear, Sarah, I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't know they'd go that far. Her voice cracked. I thought we were just trying to protect what was ours. What was yours? I repeated. She flinched. I mean, I didn't think you'd fight. You always just left. That part was true. But I wasn't the girl who left anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was scared. I thought if I didn't go along, they'd cut me out too. I watched her wipe a tear with the sleeve of her expensive coat. It wasn't that I didn't believe she felt regret. I just didn't care if she did. No threats, no rage, just silence. I stood, tucked the phone back into my pocket, and stepped away without looking back. Her voice followed me halfway across the cafe, but I didn't stop. Outside, the air smelled like distant rain. I pulled my coat tighter and walked not toward the past, not even toward revenge, just forward. And waiting in my inbox was the final document Grandpa had left me marked in bold: transfer of deed, effective upon confirmation. The courthouse steps were quieter than I expected. No cameras, no confrontation, just the sound of my boots tapping steady against old concrete as I made my way down. In my hand was the deed, my name etched in bold print beneath the seal of the county and the estate. No more doubt. No more pretending. I paused just before the last step and turned back, facing the building I'd fought so long to be heard in. I held the deed in front of me and took a single photo. No smile, just stillness. The caption I typed was simple. They tried to burn the legacy. I inherited the foundation. Then I shut my phone off and slipped it into my bag. No victory dance, no announcement, no need. I walked 5 blocks in silence to the small brick studio I'd closed on 2 days earlier. A modest space with tall windows and scuffed floors tucked between a florist and a forgotten laundromat. It wasn't much yet, but it was mine. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and reached for the envelope Grandpa had left in the vault, the one marked "Start Here." Inside were 3 things. A hand-drawn sketch of the studio's blueprint, a folded business license application already half completed in his handwriting, and a letter with 4 words underlined, and quote, "Make something they can't erase." End quote. I sat, cross-legged on the dusty floor, the weight of everything I'd lost and reclaimed settling around me like dust after a storm. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was the beginning, and I was ready to